Hello.
Welcome back from vacation, sir. Short.
Yes.
Speak for yourself, people.
Yeah, exactly. You've been busy.
Yeah, I'm having new fun activity that I hopefully can share with you guys in the future that I'm working on.
I'm excited to hear it.
Mm.
Getting a couple more things done here. Read AI meeting notes. So that's good. Someone's got some good meeting notes going for us. Read AI. Hey, Marianne.
Hey, morning.
Morning to
Hello.
you, ma'am. Thank you for your rise.
7:00 a.m. is better than 6:00 a.m. So I appreciate the extra hour. Thank you.
Yes, yes.
Well, this is the last thing that I do today. I'm so happy.
Oh, nice, nice. Yeah, there's a
Good
lot of folks that are
webinar,
done.
Marian. Good webinar.
Thank you,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
Going to,
unfortunately, they recorded it, but they forgot to record the video. So
Oh,
Oh no.
it's okay. You know, whoever joined in person got a bonus, I guess.
clearly.
Yeah, see, that's what happens when you show up on time. Yeah, no, I don't
Right.
know. They forgot to click that button. But
It
thank you.
happens.
Yeah.
Right. We've got so many bots and robots
In a
taking notes in
Teams
this
meeting
thing. I
right
see them
now.
everywhere. Hey, Rachel. Adrian, good to see you. Michael.
Good morning.
Hello, how are you?
Hello.
Oh, an early morning to you, Rachel. Thank you from California. Give folks another minute or two. We had a pretty good group, probably 20 or so that have accepted.
Did you only send this out yesterday, or did I miss that before?
No, we sent the meeting reminder at the end of the last meeting, and then yesterday was everybody's back from vacation, so now remind them again.
Yeah, we had in the past you've done calendar invites, so this time it didn't happen. So I think it caught
Oh,
all of us by surprise. Yeah.
Yes, yes. I was
Yeah.
also like, because of
well,
not too long
good.
ago, I was like, when is
I'm
the
all about
next?
keeping people on their toes. I mean, that's the key. I mean, if it's
Well,
too
we're here.
predictable, that's a problem. We're here,
Well,
exactly.
We're here.
yeah, I mean, for you guys, some of you had to get up earlier to be here, so.
I know, but then there's no conflicts.
Right.
No calendar conflicts at 7 a.m.
Oh, there's definitely there's definitely
Hi,
potential.
Marianne.
Good
Hello,
morning.
Alan.
Good morning.
Hey, gang.
Hello.
There's
How's your
definitely
house, Marianne?
It's so far the fire's not as close as it could be. But we're waiting. We're on evacuation warnings and we may get evacuated in the next several days. For those who have been following national news, the San Bernardino National Forest is on fire in Southern California. 26,000 acres have already burned, and that's where I live. I live in the San Bernardino National Forest. So this is going to be uh, no, knuckle biter for the next week or so.
Well, good luck.
Absolutely. Yeah, hang in there. Hang in there for sure. All right. Hey, Daywee's here. Adonis is here. We've got a good crowd. All right, gang, let's go ahead and get started so we can keep it right to our hour if we can. So I appreciate everybody making the time. Evidently, I did not do the calendar invite until yesterday, so there you go. But that's just to keep you on your toes, of course. So today I tried to put some details in the sort of the reminder of the meeting yesterday about us starting to make our move to wind down the initiative. And this was a conversation that I had with Stuart following the last leakage emissions initiative call. And so that's going to be the majority of our conversation today is talking about what it looks like. My communication with Stuart was, we have 94 people that are involved in this leakage emissions initiative. It feels a bit too early to just transfer to the next initiative relative to carbon and some of the things that, if he doesn't hop on, he was going to put a comment or two on that. Then I'll mention what Andy Blackhall will be leading and share that on the screen here in just a moment. But I said it seems a bit abrupt, and we have quite a bit from an outreach and education piece that's still outstanding. We're really just now starting to get the word out and communicating on the white paper, the methodology, and we are continuing to push, obviously, towards verification bodies as well. So the majority of our conversation today is going to be centered around that, is sort of getting the initiative sort of closed, sort of a report of the activities that have happened, and then thinking about what are some ways that we can gauge progress as we continue on the education side, the outreach and education side. So be priming your thoughts for that, because I do want to get some feedback from folks that are on the call here in just a moment. But I do want to do a sort of follow up. There were a couple items in our last meeting. One of those was relative to the case studies and some enhancements to the template there. And then also was on some common terminology, and that one came as an email follow-up from Andrew Wallace. I don't see him on today, but I'm going to restate what his comment was. But at the regarding the enhancements to the case studies and the template, that was something that Alan Wyatt, you had raised your hand and said, "Hey, I'd like to put some thoughts and ideas to that." So, Alan, let me give you the floor for just a moment, if you could, and maybe give an update on kind of where you are and where it's headed relative to those enhancements.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Can you hear me, everyone?
Yep, you fine.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to Steve some about this, make some constructive suggestions on how to give a little more rigor and consistency to the case studies so that they would have more gravitas with funding agencies. You know, not a full feasibility study, but a little more punch. And at that last meeting, a couple others expressed interest, and others expressed interest by email after that. That got us into August, when things are kind of quiet in many parts of the world. So this is just now picking up again. And Marianne Dickinson has volunteered to be kind of our organizer, and I will be involved from a technical point of view. But the plan, and Marianne, correct me if I'm wrong, is there would be a meeting of those who have expressed interest, and in the latter part of September. And by the way, anybody who is on this call now and has an interest in methodologies for adding some more consistency and rigor to the case studies, by all means let me and Marianne know. But
yeah, put your interest in the chat and we can note that.
Right. So what I've done yesterday is I put some thoughts down on paper, some of which I've talked about with Steve and Marianne a little bit, but I wanted to get it written down. And then I won't go into those specifics today in the interest of time, but Marianne and any others, well, we would review that and other input at the first meeting. It's at least how I saw it. Would you see it the same way, Marianne?
Yeah, and I was hoping we could maybe even on this call just sort of set the date for the next meeting. I was thinking if this time of day works for everybody, maybe October 1st, have it be the same time on October 1st. If that day will work for folks, that gives enough notice, I think, for calendar accommodation. So if that works, we can send out a Zoom invite for that time.
The
something
date works
happening
for
on
me.
here. Yeah.
Again, you guys will be leading it, but that works for me to sort of be there from a consistency standpoint.
That would be
Okay.
good. Yeah, October 1 is good for me.
Okay,
All
so
right.
we just need to make sure we have everybody who would like to be part of this meeting to let us know.
Right.
So I don't miss somebody.
And I think one thing from my point of view is we're not trying to get perfection here. You know, we're not trying to have a, encyclopedic type case study, but, what are a few things that could be done to enhance this? And um, uh, certainly if a financing institution is interested in an upcoming project, they'll have questions, but this case study template may help in the beginnings of a feasibility or economic assessment or whatever. So, I don't see this as a long activity, but, something we can do in a relative short amount of time, perhaps noting some future enhancements. So, if there's questions, comments, I'd be open to hear them. If you want to take it back from here, Steve, that's fine.
Yeah, I think it might even help that it might just sort of plant the seeds of it. So I I showed our home and landing page for LEI, which will continue to stay active. This isn't something that we're going to bring anything down. I mean, it's a body of work that's been created and it's getting visited quite often. So the piece that we're trying to do, and I just put this out as a caution, is I think we're trying to make improvements to the case study template to give guidance direction. But our number one thing is that we've got something that we're able to point to. And so I want us to at least be thinking about and careful that we don't have it so rigorous that we don't get case studies. We want to make some improvements. We want to add footnoting and things where we need them. But the fact that we have something that is now we're able to point to, this is the most important thing, especially from an outreach and education next phase of leakage emissions initiative. So I put that into the discussion to say, let's make sure that it isn't a refinement process, that it's something that as we're improving and tightening them or giving more context, I think Alan is the word you use, which is right on target, that we just keep them moving. I mean, we need defensible case studies across the world to be in a location where they can be pointed to, because that's part of
Yeah.
the outreach and education piece.
Is,
And I think this is
this the new one a recent one that Marco did?
yes,
Okay,
exactly.
good. I haven't seen that one yet. And when he presented, I thought it incorporated many of the ideas that I was thinking of. So it's great to see that. I'll have to
Yep.
look at that in a little more detail, but
Yep. Take a look. Take a look at it.
yeah,
And
yeah.
again, please also don't take my comments as dampening what we're trying to do. I just want to make sure that it is supportive and we're getting, as you said, more context around what does get posted.
Well, that and documentation of the sources of data. If you have a carbon intensity figure, where did it come from?
Right.
And showing the water balances, I think would be good. Uh, you know,
Yeah.
but this is how much detail is recommended is something that this little group would decide on. It's not my
Perfect.
decision. So
Perfect. Okay. Other comments
um,
before I move us to the next agenda item? I want to come back to kind of an email from Andrew Andrew Wallace following our last meeting. Anything else on case study template modifications?
nope. Unless people have questions or they want to send me a note via email, I can put my email in the chat if I can figure out where it is.
Yeah, there's several, and we'll list these back in the minutes, but several have already said that they want to be a part of it. So, and their
Yeah.
availability October 1st. So I think now it's at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on October 1st for this working group.
Marianne, are
Okay.
you seeing that? Because, well, here's
Yes,
chat. I'm
yes,
sorry.
I have everybody's name who are in the chat. And if anybody else is interested, please add your name and I'll note it. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Very good. By the
So
way,
this,
just the idea of terminology, consistent terminology is, I think, a part of what we're thinking of, but maybe what Andrew's talking about is something a little different. Yeah, I don't know.
yeah, I put this as the follow-up from that last meeting just to note it because I think it's a good point. So he sent me an email afterwards and just doing a quick check. Andrew, are you on by any chance? Okay. So it was looking at it and sort of the some of the things that we had communicated either through the case studies or in the white paper itself or in the AWWA committee report. And he was just communicating on consistency relative to the terminology, tons, et cetera. So I think what we're trying to do is just make sure that as we are talking, and this could be something that this template group works on, is sort of getting us to, if there's any refinements in metric tons, megatons, megametric tons,
Yeah,
so that he has commented there.
makes sense.
Any other comments? I think those were our follow-up items from last month or last meeting. Any other items? All right. So let's move now to the transition to the working group. Let me ask if everybody, if you're not speaking, if you can go to mute, please. There's a little bit of feedback coming in. And so sort of put a couple of comments to think about, sort of our timeline to make sure that we've got alignment on what it is that the working group would be doing from this point forward in terms of outreach and education. And then, how to keep everybody involved. Again, my biggest concern when I talked to Stuart about this, and the initiative will be 2 years, and there's certainty that we have accomplished what the mission was, which was a methodology, defensible methodology, a white paper that puts this into industry, and then starting the process of case study, and then this outreach launch pad, which we have. So, but we now have, as I said, 94. And let me ask, Adonis, if you could, let me ask you to mute. It looks like I'm getting some feedback from your channel there. Thank you. So, in my biggest concern when I talked to Stuart was we should not have a hard, abrupt stop. And that is, we have now 94 folks that are involved in this initiative and are at least a part of it, have asked to be a part of it, want education, and also we have, a core group of probably 25 that are very active. So the concern I had is all of a sudden, if we say the initiative is over and folks aren't necessarily ready to port over to the new initiative, which is the carbon efficiency rating methodology, and I'm going to spend some time talking about that, or maybe if Andy Blackhall is on, I'll let him communicate about it. That we need to continue the seeds of outreach education with this group, in addition to have a great majority of our brain power go to this next initiative, but to also make sure that we're staying active in the communication. So let me pause there, and if you could, by raising your hand and then I'll acknowledge you and come off mute. I just want to get some feedback from kind of this timing of ending the initiative and moving it to a working group, communication working group of, is that the right approach from this point? So let me get some feedback from folks that have been sort of with it all the way through, if I could. Some comments.
Steve, this is
Go
Marianne.
ahead, Mary Ann.
I am not understanding why one has to end and a new one starts, why it isn't a continuous process. I guess I don't quite understand Stuart's thought process there.
The quick answer is, I think he makes a good point. He said, we just can't have initiatives go on and on and on. And I appreciate, and so I think what he's trying to do is to get this closed, and then if we want to create or to continue it as a working group, which is what I think we should do, that we do that. and
So
that we
we're just
also are.
changing the name then to a working group, and we're all
That's
still
right.
staying up. Okay, okay,
Yep. I think that's the intent, and to get it to its where it's got a finite closure, so it
okay.
can be pointed to within the IWA. And you probably know more about this, Marianne, than any of us. But with that IWA to say that this was started and this was stopped, and this is a report of what the activities were. So
Yeah.
when he explained it to me a little bit, it made some sense to me.
I just
Daly, go
want to
ahead.
make sure people think that they're automatically included and not that they're not included. That's all. So, thank you.
Exact same concern I had, Marion, is an abrupt stop without a clear future. Daly, go ahead.
Um, yeah, I can understand the logic. I think that closing it is probably not the right word. Maybe suspending it or something like that. I think that, it is true that we've achieved what we set out to do, and maybe there's some tinkering on the edges. But I think, the basis is there. I suppose the problem that we have is, and maybe it changes from country to country, but what I see, the driver isn't there really. So it's there in nice words and objectives, but at the moment, these haven't been translated into
Yep.
specific actions by the government, and so it's probably hard to push it on a general sense. So I think that this pause is probably as much a reflection of how the world is moving. It'll have to move, and it will become important, but maybe we're just a little bit ahead of time, that there aren't specific drivers to push it. I think that the other initiative, and sorry, I just jumped to this because shortly I'm in the middle
Mhm.
of preparing a big proposal, so
Mhm.
I have to drop out. But with this initiative, the first question is it possible to get a Word document instead of PDF? Because I think that in principle it's quite a good initiative, but I don't think that it's that well thought through at the moment. So that's just a general comment.
Okay, very good. I got it as a PDF as well, but I think that's a fair request, and then I also think that first meeting when it's set, and I don't think that it's set. And let me just check: is either Stuart or Andy or Bombos or Noam, or any of those that are leading this initiative, are they on this call today? If you could come off mute and maybe give us a little more insight. Okay.
If I can just
Um,
add, I actually had a chat with Bambos in the World Water Conference, because he was there, about this, and they're very much looking for comments. So because I sort of said what I just said now to him as well, that I think that it's interesting, but maybe not that well thought out or thought through. So maybe getting a document that we can put the comments on would be a good start.
a great comment. And it follows in line with this. I got an email from Mike Rigglesworth yesterday, and he basically very supportive of Ellie. Can't be here today, but he has been on the majority of these. And his just to pick from his comments, he said basically, good work. The work to date has been valuable, and anyone I talk with sees an official nonpartisan group like IWA highlighting the issue as very important, and specifically the levels of carbon and leakage. His comment to really tie to yours, Dewi, is that said, I wouldn't say that I've seen the expected uptick in the spending that we were hoping for. Everyone's confident that it's coming. And so I think that that's getting to what you're saying. We all had at least hoped that it would be this onrush of tying to the carbon, the green finance money, and then that would open up the door. I actually now am feeling what we felt here in the States relative to the water balance and audits, and it is a long game. It is a long game where we have to continue to do the reinforcement, the strength of 94 across the world driving this initiative, the strength of the case studies. That's why I think I'm so adamant that the working group needs to continue its work. And we need to continue to have conversations with the verification bodies. But I think what you noted, Mike, and others are noting it, is that it's a little bit of a change in expectation. I think we have to open up our horizon. I really felt like we would latch on and there was the flood of money to try to do funding. But that's not quite there yet. But it doesn't mean we should stop. So I appreciate your comment. Let's go to Alan next. I see you've got your hand up. Comments relative to this working group concept. Now come off mute, Alan.
Okay, sorry. I'm not too worried about what you call the transition or whatever, but what I see in your email, Steve, is an emphasis on outreach and education and verification. And I think that's good, you know. Now, what we may want to do is identify some important outreach opportunities. And I'm particularly thinking of the leakage regulations in the drinking water framework directive in the EU, which has set targets for, or is going to be setting targets for leakage, but the process for making evaluations of priorities and allocating EU funding is very much up in the air, but energy use and climate are part of the thinking of the objectives of this major investment program. So it's been a little hard for us in the water loss KPI groups to penetrate the decision makers at the EU, but Euro is a potential avenue in, and there's going to be tons and tons of money allocated in this direction, and some guidance on allocation process, not just using case studies, but sort of looking forward. Okay, of all these cities in Poland, which are the ones to focus on? Or, should you spend money in the Netherlands or Portugal or Greece or where? And so I think that's an opportunity. We can't outreach everywhere. There may be other good, opportunities, but picking a few specific targets may help us achieve more impact than outreach everywhere, so to speak. And I'm not saying that's what was thought of. I'm just saying maybe it'd be good to focus the outreach efforts on particular, what look like rewarding opportunities.
Good points. Other comments on this transition that we're talking about? All right, I'm going to carry us back to maybe thinking about the timeline, and I think this is a reasonable timeline. I've sort of dropped in a December 31st and then kind of a summary of the initiative activities by first quarter of next year, just to think about that. So that would be something that possibly in one of our meetings we can have a kind of a group review, some comments similar as we did on the white paper of sort of the summary, where I would like to note kind of at the beginning where we were and at the end where we are relative to the leakage emission initiative membership and things like that. So it'd be some statistics I think would be helpful in that. So the next piece is kind of the knowledge transfer. And I think we sort of hit this relative to this new initiative. Davey, I think your comment of the ability to offer comments from folks that have been sort of marching along here together for 2 years is an important piece of what is the next step. So I think maybe getting, as I've got an action here, trying to get a Word document where we can communicate back on that would be good. But really, from my perspective, from chairing this initiative, I think that this is an appropriate next step is to go deeper and keep conversation and have a body of work that comes out of this. And so I don't know that anyone that is sort of behind the genesis of this is on the call, but for them to be able to speak to it and to then be able to pull working items together from this group. And I do encourage that it be a wider group, just as we've done here, where there's a lot of input, a lot of feedback along the way, because we have industry and consultants and utilities and associations and folks that are involved in policy. All of those voices need to be a part of this discussion. So just to encourage everyone to be ready and able to transition and be a part of that new initiative. You started this, I think, Alan, with the comment of ways to maybe target sort of this is more in the brainstorming session that I'd like to do now, of thinking about what does outreach look like? Where should we be focusing some of our outreach efforts? And I'll start by saying there are two things that I said in the past 2 weeks where leakage emissions initiative has been cited. Marion did a great job in a webcast last week, and a part of the presentation was the direct tie to carbon associated with leakage, as she was doing really a non-revenue water fundamentals and programmatic type approach to it and how to improve the data. So I think in every presentation that we're out there making, we need to do that. Margie Hunter did a fantastic job presenting to the New Jersey Water Loss Control Committee on New Jersey Americans' recent initiative, and it actually sits on our website as an initiative, but talking about the carbon. So I think that every opportunity we have, that's an area where we're out speaking, we're presenting, we're talking about projects to tie it. And then I had as a follow-up from last meeting to get an official IWA, a much larger banner webcast to as large of a group as we can, not just the water loss specialist group, but maybe also those within IWA that may be connected on sustainability initiatives, to where we can do an outreach and education webcast where we're talking about the initiative, the white paper, this group, what it's come, how it's come forward to put this out there, but to do a larger education. So those are a few ideas, but I want to now pause and maybe get additional awareness activities that you see that we could do, or we could have our membership, but the group to basically be out talking about it and communicating. What are some ideas, if you could, by hand, and then maybe tossing out there? Any ideas? So, Alan, you mentioned pick a few countries. Go ahead, Dewi. I'll come back to that. Go ahead, Dewi. Come off mute.
Yeah, just a couple of things. One is, so we're including it in the Palm Plus software that we have, which looks at the economics of reducing losses, but it assesses also what the environmental benefit will be. So we're doing that. I think that you're right. When we talk about water loss, we should really be talking in terms of both, the environmental, but also the economic consequence of losing water. I think I just wanted to pick up on what Alan was saying, and I don't know whether this is general, but just because there's an EU directive doesn't mean that the industry gets into top gear immediately. There's a huge inertia within the industry. At the moment, we're overwhelmed with work because there's EU money coming into reducing leakage. But it's all to do with having DMAs and so forth, and it's less orientated on and also finding leaks, but on actually reducing and maintaining lower leakage level. And so, the next step of environmental impact or even the economic side of it is just not being considered. So I think that we have to be aware. I think certain utilities might be more receptive, but the industry really needs to be pushed in this direction. And just because even an organization like the EU has a directive doesn't mean that it won't take, as you, Steve, was saying, quite a long time for it to seep through to the industry. I think we just got to be aware of that, and maybe it's the younger generation on this call that will actually implement it and will be long gone into retirement.
There you go. Good comments. Let's go to Rachel next, if you can come off mute, and then we'll go to Alan and then Andrew McCarthy.
All right. So I work for a wholesaler. I've got 25 retail agencies. I was able to motivate 25 who are doing leak detection actively. And of those 25, I got one of them kind of excited about a case study, and we're at the finish line. I think we're going to make it. But I think if we were to have a panel of case studies present, perhaps at NOL, I know that's a ways in the future, or at some sort of web cast in between, but hearing from the utilities is sort of powerful to motivate other utilities to take this on.
Right.
And I'd be happy to participate when our case study gets there.
No, thank you. You've been deliberate, consistent, and have a lot of perseverance. So thank you for continuing to push, because they are important. Let's go Alan Wyatt, then Andrew McCarthy, and then Michael.
Well, first of all, Rachel, that's great to hear. But I hope that we can kind of agree on some of the particulars of case studies to make some, improvements before we roll them out, in big fashion. But I don't want to slow things down. But my main point was that in IWA politics, if you're thinking about a full IWA webinar, some outreach to some of the other specialist groups that are in the same kind of subject neighborhood would be good. I was just trying to look up the names of all the specialist groups here, but there's climate smart cities. There's a number of other groups that it might be good to have on board. I mean, as a member of the KPI group, headquarters organized a webinar on KPIs without even telling us, and it went way off in outer space. So what you don't want to do is annoy others who are interested in the topic of carbon emissions from water. So
right.
Marianne maybe knows some of the different groups, the efficient water group. I mean, it needs investigation, but the point is to, build some connections so that you have support across.
That's a great suggestion for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, Andrew McCarthy, if you could come off mute, and then we'll go to Michael next.
Hello, everyone. Apologies, I've got a airline in my background, but I just wanted to say one thing I think we should focus on these future state case studies is getting the cost of the entire non-revenue water effort, because I think if we can get that down, pare that down to a cost per ton, a lot of these funding agencies are going to see that water loss is actually a cheaper path to carbon sustainability than some of the other efforts that they are currently funding. I know I put together a lot of those case studies, and I didn't have access to that information. Some of them I didn't ask, so that's not a blame on anybody by any means. But I do think we should give more effort to that in the future.
Good comment, good thought. Okay, Michael, let's go to you next.
Morning. I would kind of second what Steve was mentioning. It just takes a little bit of time. I mean, Portland has been, I feel like, a leader in carbon emissions and tracking that, and even tying water loss and some of our daily operations to carbon reduction was a bit of a shock when I presented this to our internal stakeholder group last year. You know, we are all in, we're directly tying it, we're kind of putting some metrics behind it. Some of the timing has kind of worked out, but when we went to some of our some of our regulators and some of the folks that we were hoping to get funding from, it was kind of perceived as a little bit of a radical idea. So I will just say it is helpful to have some of the stuff documented so that we can, you know, and I'm happy to try to keep working at trying to get Portland as a case study, but to have something that we can show folks and say like, no, this is it's well thought out. This is very normal. And this is something that we should be kind of tying to carbon emissions. It's not just vehicles. It's not just, you know, construction and this and that. It's also our daily operations. But that takes time, and it takes time to try to convince folks that, yes, this is well thought out, and it helps to have some of that documented.
Great comments. Yes, let me know how we can help Portland to become a case study. You'd be fantastic, actually, to be able to show. Alex, see you have got a hand up as well. If you could come off mute.
Yes, sure. Look, I'm gonna say something. I don't know if you guys ever encountered this. It's a war against different lobby companies. For example, why I'm saying this, right now in Romania, the trend is to have photovoltaic panels all of the sudden. The discussion was for years, or solar panels, so on, and all of the sudden, everything just everyone is doing project like this. So, and they get funding. Okay, so it's a trend at the moment, and I'm guessing that water loss reduction to have a lower emission of carbon dioxide carbon through water loss is not in the trend at the moment. So I don't think that. I think probably in 2 or 3 years will be something like that, but I don't expect myself to convince something to technical or body authorities to technical or logical arguments. I think simply it's a more likely like a political trend. I'm unfortunately also water losses, as I perceive it in Romania, is like that. It's a trend at some point. Everybody get interested at some point, but not for the technical reason, not for the right reason. Okay,
Gotcha.
so this is my feeling and my experience here. I don't know if this happens, you know, in other parts of the world.
Yeah, I think it gets back to the comments that we've had earlier about this being the long game. And you know, it has to be to where it's almost where it gets consistency. It's starting to be shown in tons of carbon, and it becomes part of that discussion. I do think that it's very important that the education at the ministry level and this of the awareness of what is out there of this methodology, and that utilities are starting to look at this, that's just, it's going to take a long effort to do it. And I think it's going to be continuous. It's going to be, you know, a rotation. It's going to take the key leadership from the countries like yourself, like others that are on the call in country, to have these conversations and keep beating the drum for sure. Okay. I really appreciate that. We had several really good comments relative to sort of some thoughts about the awareness and some activities. Any other ideas that have come up? Barry, I saw your comment in the chat. I just am catching up on that, of where we possibly could do some anonymous scenarios. Is that maybe a bit more of your thinking there, if you don't mind coming off mute?
I think we're struggling to get true case studies on where carbon emissions have been driving the leakage reduction. But as Davey was saying, there's lots of people that are doing leakage reduction projects, whether it's because of EU or because of other drivers. Maybe if we take the numbers that are available from the relatively public case studies and just apply some scenarios to them, saying, well, if this utility was in a zone where there's a high carbon intensity, then this particular project would have also resulted in XYZ emissions reductions. We don't have to name the utility, we just say, and however, if the same utility would have been in this particular area, then it would this would be a result. Just trying to see if there's a way of finding numbers based on real world applications, real reductions, and then just trying to play around with that. It's just an idea because I think we're all struggling of trying to come up with case studies where people have been using the carbon emissions as one of the key drivers and also documented and noted the results of it. But leakage reduction projects, there's plenty of those around, where independent almost of the technology that's been used. I mean, we as a company, we propose different technologies. So we have certain case studies where people have used that technology to achieve a reduction. Not all of those customers, actually very few of them at the moment, are using carbon emission reduction as the main driver, but the results are there in a way. So so
I mean,
by making it anonymous, maybe we can leverage and just say some hypothetical case studies based on real world numbers.
I mean, Barry, to me, with Xylem, you have an incredible opportunity, and a lot of the majors could, major equipment suppliers, technology suppliers, consultants, PVC contractors, of doing exactly what you said is almost a roll-up that describes, Xylem has, whatever. If it has a little bit of a marketing touch to it, so be it. But if the reality is this many cubic meters were removed and that relates to this many metric tons of carbon, then I think that's exactly what we need to have come forward. And it's caveated. People are looking at it, but if it cites, like we showed with the Italian case study, it cites the methodology and some of those resources that were used. That's what we're after, and it's defensible. So I think it's a great suggestion.
Okay.
Let's go, Alan, and then
I'll work with Mike then to see if we can find and our marketing team to see if we can look with something. Thanks.
Super. I'm going to go back to Alan, and then I saw Stuart Hamilton. You came on. After Alan, I want to give you maybe a minute or two of where we are, and then I want to get some comments relative to the new initiative that I have on the screen. So if you could be prepared for that. So go ahead, Alan.
Yeah, I very much second Barry's comment. I think there's a lot of programs out there, many of them that are not Xylem, even though Xylem is very, very active. No, but for example, World Bank and IDB are doing a lot of big projects. There's a huge, huge effort in Morocco, in a country where they're spending $1 billion on a big desal plant. So the pre-feasibility and feasibility studies are generally available. Monitoring progress on those projects is also public information. So, I think there are some other channels of information to either ongoing or recently completed non-revenue water projects where the energy savings and carbon emission savings could be documented, which then you're telling the money guys, something more about what they got for their money, so.
Right. Okay. Stuart, let me give you just a quick little overview. We have consensus certainly on the call that there is some logic to sort of suspending or winding down the initiative and the timetable that we've discussed. There is also consensus that it is not a stop the outreach and education, that is the long game, that should continue in the form of a leakage emissions working group. The 94 or so that have committed time and being aware of and offering content and thoughts there. We've spent some time going through sort of the knowledge transfer and then also some opportunities, including back to the importance of getting it into the softwares that are out there. I mentioned of the Palm Plus, Easy Calc, and also the free water audit software. Revisiting the idea of the webcast and doing that with communication to some of the other specialist groups within IWA to get a broader reach of the main deliverable, which is the methodology and the white paper. So there was discussion as we were talking about knowledge transfer and really putting energy and excitement behind the new initiative to get a bit more about that, including a copy of this initiative in a Word document that could be directly commented on and then sent back to Andy. So that was one request. And then I gave sort of an opportunity for someone to give a little more detail about the new initiative. So if you're in a spot, you can comment on any of that. And then if not, certainly comment on the new initiative, when it will get started, what that looks like, et cetera.
Okay, Steve. I'm not sure if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yes, sound good.
Okay. I've also got another meeting going as well, so you might hear some distance bit. Yeah, can you hear the other meeting as well, or you just hear? Okay, you can just hear me.
You sound good. You sound fine.
So no, the situation is that, like I say, we had the chat, Steve, and to an extent, the LEI group has done an incredible job moving it forward and getting it where it has done today. It's done an incredible task, and but as we spoke about, we've achieved the objectives of the initiative, which is one thing, but not to move it from an initiative to a working group, which the working group stays in situation until the working group feels that the working group has achieved all its objectives, because initiative has to have a time frame. The working group can go on forever if need be, because that's a different situation altogether. So we want to move this across. We want to move this across to a working group from an initiative, because you've achieved all the objectives, which is unbelievable what we've done in the time where it is by I heard Alan talking about earlier on. We're actually talking about the global side of this and the initiatives and the carbons. We're talking about this in Port of Spain in October at the CWWA conference, where IDB we've actually got a panel discussion with IDB and all the banks and all the ministers, where we're going to be throwing at them climate change initiatives, mainly promoting the NRW side. So we've got that being thrown at them. And before that, I'm in Miami in 2 weeks' time at the infrastructure conference, where I'm presenting the climate change initiative through NRW to the Caribbean infrastructure people as well. So that's on I think that's the 25th or the 26th. So it's all being pushed, and all the ministers, the Caribbean, where we're pushing it forward, CWWA, the banks, World Bank, they're all supportive of it. So they all want to go down this road of this. Now, where this led us to is moving this initiative to the initiative that Andy Blackwell was going to do alongside with Noam, with myself, Bambus, just initially getting them down off the first route, off the first road. And what we're going to look at there is we're going to identify every process that is achieved or is conducted in the water sector. So it's every single meter reading, for instance. Somebody said about meter reading. So we'll look at meter reading, and we'll look at meter reading if you're doing meter reading of purely doing AMR systems. That's less carbon intensive than going out and reading the water meters. You've still got to install the meters, which is the same carbon, but the way of reading the meter will have a difference. The billing scenario, if we completely do the billing scenario from automation, that has zero carbon. Whereas if we do the billing analysis, we're collecting bills, posting stamps, putting them in letter boxes, delivering them by hand. That's a carbon intensity. We're going to look at every element. We're going to look at repairs, service repairs, installation of stop taps, burst main repairs, installation of a sluice valve. Every activity in the water sector, we will look at and give it a carbon intensity. So we'll then have category A carbons and category G carbon responses. So then we can only do this because we found the information out from the LEI group. So what we're going to do then is say to people, if you want to be productive, on your repairs, approach or adopt a category A process of repairs instead of doing a category G process of repairs, repair process. Now, where it comes from, if you look at a new source of water, do we build a desalination plant or do we do an RW leak detection? To do a desalination plant is a category G compared to doing source and leak detection will be category A or category B. And then we're going to give everything the efficiency scale. So we're actually going to show that if you want to do very low-level carbon intensity processes, that will be on the carbon efficiency scale, an A. And if you do a very high intensity carbon process of finding a leak or whatever, that becomes category G. So we're going to categorize everything in the water sector, what we're going to do. And where we stop, we don't know. Where we stop going down the road, we don't know. If you're excavate by hand or with suction excavation, two different categories. Where it will end up is that when we then encourage all the utilities to use a very low carbon approach to finding your solving your problem of there to achieve the carbon intensity savings from the what we discussed at the LEI group. Then what's going to happen at the end, we will have a project which IDB will say that if we're going to enter into this project with give a loan, the project end would be a category A or a category B successful project on carbon savings, on carbon intensity of use, against a project that could be a category G. So on that, to save the water conservation, to save the water situation, do we do a desalination plant or do we enter an NRW project? So the IDBs, the World Banks can then say, we have done this project, we have done this, we have done that. And the project eventually itself actually formed on the water loss carbon efficiency scale. That project was a category B. It was successful on carbon reduction. It was successful on carbon intensity to solve the problem. And the overall project, we give it a category B, which means it ticks the box of a nice project. That's the concept of where we're going. I've seen some chats come up. That's where it's good. That's where we're trying to aim it to go to.
Right.
So this is in
so Stuart, let me ask you.
This is at the very, very early stages of this. Like we were in the LEI group.
Yep.
We got to thrashing out where we're going to go, where we're going to drive it to, where it's going to be driven to. No difference to where we started this. This is the dream that we want.
Right.
How we get there at this moment in time, I haven't got a clue. I don't know.
So I've got a couple quick comments, Stuart. So assuming that Andy's going to be able to communicate directly to this group, this entire listing of emails of the group is here, and I can reach out to him. But keeping this group aware and involved and figuring out how we can bring input. So we want to fully support, be a part of. So I'm just sharing with you the 94 or so. Everybody is here on the website to pull that email address to inform.
Totally 100%, Steve. We're following the same format as you've adopted. It's going to set up a web page, exactly the same as what you've done. So the same process we've adopted for the LEI, Andy's going to follow the same sort of procedure. He will be much the same setup of what you've done that. We're going to do much the same of the web page. We're going to have groups. We're going to have working parties. And as I said, at this stage now, a lot of the questions that are being asked, we don't know the answer to. Much the same when we had these discussions, me, you, Andrew McCarthy, Bambus, at the start of this group.
Right.
We didn't even know where it was going to go. The same as all we know is what we want to be of the objective is to move what we found here to the next level in another initiative.
Gotcha. So let me do a quick pause. I know we're right at the top of the hour for any questions directly for Stuart on the new initiative, and then I'll get us to a wrap and talk about our next opportunity as the working group and us working towards this final report. Any questions, comments for Stuart? Go ahead, Alan.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if the numbers of grams of carbon for each of those activities, has that been researched, or are those sort of illustrative estimates? I mean, has the detailed research been done for each of those things?
It was research taken from Google.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Well, it's a concept. We're showing the concept there. We've got to prove it, and we can only prove it now because we've got the knowledge from the LEI group to understand how we're going to do things. It's information I found on Google. Whether it's right, whether it's wrong, until we do some research and some investigation, we don't know.
Yeah, fine. Thank you.
Gotcha. Okay, any other closing comments? I'm going to move us to sort of a wrap of next activities. Any other closing comments? So a little bit of a summarization.
I need to jump off, Steve, because I've got to get onto this other. I've got to get back to this other one. All right, many thanks.
Thank you, Stuart.
I can't emphasize enough. Really do appreciate what you guys have done. Steve's been a fantastic role doing this chair, and without everybody, we wouldn't have got there. And you don't realise how much of a breakthrough, and this is talked about globally. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody's doing it, and if we hadn't got this group together to do it, we wouldn't be anywhere. We wouldn't be anywhere where we are now. So I can only thank. Well, I can never thank you enough.
Thank you, Stuart. So quick wrap, we've got the October 1st, the working group on the case studies. That's 10 o'clock to be ready for that. And Alan Wyatt and Marianne will be leading us on that. We talked about outreach opportunities of the webcast, continue to try to push that forward and doing that through coordinating with some of the specialist groups. We've got the case studies of potentially looking at consolidation from several companies who have been doing leakage reduction projects, either through their products or services or as consultants, to maybe start to roll up some of those items. Some good potentials from Portland and also from Rachel with California Utilities. And then we've talked about being engaged with the new initiative that we'll be seeing some information and a commitment from Stuart to kind of outreach to this full group to get everybody's input and involvement on that. So those are sort of the highlights that I have from our discussion today. Anything else that anybody wants to bring forward as a kind of a summary point before we wrap? All right. I know it was fast paced. Thank you all for making time to be here today. It was good to see those that I saw and hear from those that we heard from. Do have some exciting opportunities and presentations I know are coming up. There's a conference in Bulgaria. There's some work going on in Romania. There's some a lot of good things happening. So continue to talk carbon and point to this this leakage emissions initiative white paper and methodology that's out there. It's going to be a long slog for us, but I feel good we can do it. All right. Thank you, gang. Have a great rest of your day.